Hey, what's going on guys? Today I'm going to be attempting a puzzle that I've been putting off for the best part of 2 years now. I'm going to be building an axis cube, which is basically a regular 3x3 that's been turned on its corner axis by 60 degrees. It's a pretty interesting looking puzzle, and I started off with the usual process of tightening up the puzzle so that it wouldn't turn before I cut it on the bandsaw. Before I did anything on the bandsaw, I decided to mark out all of the areas that I was going to cut first. Now, all the lines that I was marking out were getting kind of jumbled, but basically this is two mods in one. I'm going to be making a hexagonal dipyramid, and then I'm going to be extending out all of the unmodified faces to make it back into a cube again. I tilted the table on my bandsaw and I made the first cut just to make sure everything lined up perfectly. I don't actually know how many degrees the table had to be at, so I just kind of eyeballed it, and I think I got pretty close. And you can see here how I basically ended up with a hexagonal dipyramid, so I got the epoxy sculpt out and I filled up all of those pieces. And if you really wanted to, you could stop here, sand this puzzle down and sticker it up, and then you'd have a hexagonal dipyramid. But I was going to continue on with this modification and turn it back into a cube, so I disassembled the puzzle and I got to prepping all the pieces for extending them. After I had disassembled the puzzle, I got to removing all of the stickers that remained on the pieces. I probably should have done this while the puzzle was assembled, but I didn't think of it until afterwards. After I did this, I was going to roughen up all of those faces, getting them ready to extend with epoxy sculpt. If you're interested in how I extend pieces, I have a very detailed video on how I do this, and I'll leave that in the description below. But after I finished extending all the pieces, I sanded them all down and rounded off all of the exterior of the piece, so that I could reassemble them and then sand the entire puzzle down as one big block. And this is the point in the project where it's kind of started to go downhill. I took the puzzle over to my belt sander and I began to refine the shape. Now how I do this is I just place it on the belt sander and I sand down all of those faces. Unfortunately, it wasn't that simple this time round. I'm calling this puzzle a failure. Because I kind of jumped the gun on the shaping method, and I've kind of worked out now why this puzzle is so difficult, and it's definitely a lot more difficult than a lot of previous puzzles that I've made out of 3x3s that ended up being cubic. And I'd like to talk a little bit about why that is, so that you don't end up doing what I did. So this is a puzzle that I made in the previous video. I've only stickered up 3 sides of it, as you may remember. And you can see here that this is made out of a regular old 3x3. I have an entire video on the building process of this puzzle, and you know, it's nothing out of the ordinary. And this is something that I have done many times before. The windmill Fisher cube, the slice cube, the regular old Fisher cube, I haven't made a windmill cube yet, but I will. And, you know, they're all fairly similar. You just kind of make all of the cuts and then you jump in with the extensions, but not in the case of this puzzle here. Now, I jumped straight into this believing that I knew exactly what I was doing, because I did. But knowing what you're doing and being able to do what it is that you know are two different things. So let's talk about why this puzzle is actually so much more difficult than other puzzles of this nature. With this puzzle here, you can see all of these dividing lines. You might not be able to see it, but it's basically, that's where the regular old puzzle ends and the extensions begin, and you can see all of the filling here as well. Now, I like to use where these lines are on the piece to kind of guide where the other side ends up being. That way you end up with two sides that are perfectly parallel to each other. This is not the easiest thing to do, but I find that, you know, you get kind of roundabout where you need to be. Now, the reason that this works is because I only have two faces and the shape of two faces to worry about. I don't have any other faces that are slightly higher or lower that get in the way of determining what the final shape of the puzzle is. However, on this puzzle, every single face is completely identical. They all have to be equal, and because of that, every time I sand one face a little too much, I start to second guess what the actual shape of, you know, the cuts here, you can see where all of that needs to be. So it gets really complicated really quickly. Now, ideally, I should have built one of these. This is a puzzle that I made in a previous video. I didn't do a build video on it, but basically you've already seen the build process to this because it's like half of this build. If I was going to do this puzzle again, which I guess I'm going to, I would build one of these and I would finish it. I would completely finish it, everything apart from the painting and stickering. The reason for that being is that I already have the shape of the faces determined. I don't have to sand this down any further, I've already got it. So I would use this as the building block for extending out all of these areas here and bringing it back to a cubic shape. Now it's easy in theory to kind of figure out how the axis cube works. You know, in fact it's very, very simple. There's not too much to it at all. But the actual building process of it is much more of a challenge, as I have now discovered. So I don't like ending these videos on failures, but at least we can take some knowledge out of this, and I will definitely attempt this later on and go into much more detail in the process as well, because of course it won't be a video in this series. So finally, the reason why this puzzle is a failure in my eyes is because all of the pieces are slightly higher or lower, or tilted to this side or tilted to that side than they need to be. Some of the faces aren't parallel to each other, other faces are, and some faces that are parallel are lower down than other faces. It means that I have to add epoxy here, sand it away here. Overall, I'm going to have to remove a lot of material to actually rectify the situation here. And if I do that, this puzzle is going to be a lot smaller than the correct 57 millimeters, which it's supposed to be. I don't talk about this much, but I do have all of my cubic puzzles be the same dimension all the way around. That's another thing that I have to do, and it's also very, very complicated to do that, let alone create a puzzle that is of a weird shape. So overall, basically, some parts of this are lower than they need to be, and I need to fill them back in. And if I do that, I'm not going to have these guiding lines in order to figure it out, so it's just going to be a huge challenge to fix what I've done. I'm better off just starting again, and it's a shame to get this far with the building process and leave it, but that just happens sometimes. So I hope you guys still learnt a thing or two from this video. I will be revisiting this puzzle later on with a new building process, and hopefully I learned from my mistakes. But anyways, I hope you guys liked this video. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.